and that proof that you took that training. And if it relates to your work life credit that you're applying for, if it relates to that central DOT, that cluster of jobs that you're going to apply for credit in, gather that up, because in our course here pretty quick, we're going to begin to mention about applying for training credit, which is part of this course if you want to apply. Not imperative, but we're going to discuss that. So I want you to look back into any of your old training documents, any of the material that you've had and saved that you've gone through. Go back and pull it aside. And if you have any transcripts of training credit, that's very important that you gather that. Well, I want to go back. You know what? I repeat myself a lot, and you're going to say, yeah, he's always saying the same thing. Well, it's kind of like the old preacher again. They ask him, well, you know, brother so-and-so, how come you preach the same lesson 3 Sundays in a row? And he said, well, you're still not doing the first thing I told you to do, so I'm going to keep preaching it until you change. Well, that's the same thing that we're talking about here. We're going to keep reminding you of something. Be sure you keep track of your documents that you're doing in the portfolio. Any work that you have, any electronic backup, keep electronic backup. Save it in several places. Because what's going to happen when your professor says, this is the due date in your syllabus, and you come up and say, whoa, I'm going to be 2 days behind. I've lost this. I've lost that. They're going to assess late points, and this could be very damaging toward your grade. So what you want to do is maintain information. Now, when you submit the full portfolio, when you get all the sections done that we've talked about on the due date, and some of you are saying, this is overwhelming. I'm really not sure what to do yet. Remember, each lesson that we're going to go through, because we have a number of lessons, they're going to talk about these sections. So I just want you to have an overview in Lesson 2, and you started taking notes on this particular presentation. But you're going to submit your portfolio with a big black clip that's going to be hooked to the paper. All your papers, because we're going to disassemble that portfolio and read it and look at it and compare your task analysis to your competency statements, to read your extra-institutional section of your articulation. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at the job task analysis carefully, as we say. We're going to look at all of that information. So we're going to be able to build our grading scale based on what you turn in. We'll look at all that. We'll be able to answer that. But you need to remember that's how you're going to turn things in. You're going to have a large black clip, and that's going to be what you use at the end of the semester. And you'll turn that in. But keep backups of everything that you're doing. And your professor is going to echo this, I'm sure, because it is important. It is wise, as another thing to think about portfolio submission, to have a friend or student in class review the section of the portfolio when you complete them. They need to look for errors. Does the information make sense, I call it? Is it correctly organized according to the instructor's directions? Is there anything that else can be done to improve the portfolio? What if your friend or fellow student doesn't understand what you've written? Good case to change. You want, as you do an assignment and you have your study partner, and if you're doing this course electronically, maybe there's a person that would be willing to exchange ideas with you through electronic mail. Is there a person that is taking the course in a similar area that you are? If you're in Dallas, maybe there's 2 of you in Dallas. You can get together and talk about it. You're not copying from each other, because that would not work. That is not moral, it's not ethical, but it's also something you couldn't do in a portfolio, because the portfolio is supposed to be unique to each person. So the portfolio submission, when you're doing these sections, I urge you to have a person to reread it. Be sure you check the spelling. Let me tell you errors. We had an individual who claimed that the individual was excellent at proofreading, excellent in writing, etc., etc. You opened up the portfolio for the individual and found errors on the very first page you opened. That was kind of a disaster for the portfolio because the individual wanted to claim that I am good at proofing as building the portfolio. It shot that portfolio down. So if you are saying, I'm a very organized person, then you turn in your portfolio and it's not in the order that we've requested, then that's going to go against you because that's actual proof that you have not done what you need to do. And I want to encourage you to do these parts of the portfolio, take time with it, take it on as a major project and enjoy it at the same time. Work on it and enjoy it. So get a friend to take a look at what you have done, and if it can be a student, that's even more helpful. Now I want to mention a word again that I mentioned earlier. That's called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. I indicated that at the creation of these presentations that we were using the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. It is an old publication, but it very well graphically illustrates the competency in the 4th, 5th, and 6th digits. I want you to look up each job that you've held and find a DOT number for it. And I want you to list the years that you held this job or jobs. I want you to list who works in the job as your supervisor, and create this chart for yourself because you're going to need this to help to decide which of these credits that you want to apply for. And as an example, here's part of what I'm talking about. The jobs held would be as in this fashion. The position title, the DOT number, years worked, and of course we'd want you to list who you worked for, but I just want to talk about this very briefly here. Feather fluffer, and I'll put the DOT number. I worked in that in 85, 86, let's say. I was a floor polisher, let's say, from 87 to 90. I was a coke taster, 91 to 95, and I was a rollerblade tester from 95 to the present, so that's what you're doing. Those are the jobs you've held. So if you can create your chart this way, this is really perfect because you have all of your jobs listed, the DOT number, the years worked, and also list where you can find the supervisor. Now some of you say that supervisor is dead and gone. Well, you may not have any proof, but you know what? You dig through your upper drawer and your chester drawers and you pull out an old document that's an old letter from that supervisor. You know, that may be something we'll use later on, that you do have some proof you were really there. But get all of your jobs together and make that listing. That's an important thing to do. Well, we want to conclude this lesson today. We want you to realize the importance of a number of things. We want you to begin working with the DOT, begin to look it up, go to the public library, maybe go to the archives. Some of you are going to say, hey, I'm having a hard time finding it. And we want you to begin considering your goals. That's going to be in the articulation, as we said. These are important concepts that we've talked about today. This lesson, I think, is one that's pivotal. We're going to help you today to kind of get rolling on this portfolio, and you're beginning to see things, and you're beginning to understand what this portfolio is going to look like. It's going to be a large document, as we said. You're going to have different sections, and now you're setting goals. You're going to say, hey, I'm already ready to put those into the articulation, and I'm going to look up the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. I'm going to begin to talk about this. So I hope that this lesson, too, has been helpful for you. Obviously, our next lessons are going to take some of these things we've talked about today and talk about them in more detail. I urge you to begin thinking about them. Do your work. Go back and rerun this if you have some questions, and continue to email your instructor. Thank you for listening and watching this presentation.